Good morning and welcome to Sunday morning. I am so glad to be here and I'm so glad that you are too. Thank you for joining me. It's been an amazing week and I'll tell you maybe the highlight yesterday. Troy and I went to this place called Radical Ropes here in Myrtle Beach, and it looked really fun from the road. We've driven by it several times over the last few weeks, and it's like a ropes course high up in the trees and very well shaded. People looked like they were having fun, and so I thought, oh, this could be fun for Troy and I to do. It would be a good couples activity, grow in our sense of team and teamwork, and be a lot of fun. And Troy has historically had some fear of heights, and so it would be a great opportunity for him to face those fears. And I've done a bunch of that type of thing before, and it's been quite a lot of fun. So we went, and it was quite an adventure, and all of those things that I just mentioned happened, and it was a really great adventure. Towards the end of the second level, there are 3 levels of hard, which ties in nicely with my talk this morning. And I love zip lining. Favorite thing to do. One of my favorite things to do. And so I'm headed out on one of these, segments of the course. And I take a big running start because it felt like I really needed to get a little extra push to make it to the other side. And it was a little bit too much of a push. And so I took this big running leap, and went so fast that I ran right into the landing on the other side. And fortunately, I didn't go face first into it. I went butt first into it. So my right butt cheek is experiencing a new sensation today, and it's been interesting. So I'm still taking care of that. I've got an ice pack on there, and so like I said, it was quite an adventure. A lot of learning lessons, and I opted out to rest after that, which normally, the previous version of me, again, this ties right into what I'm going to share today. The previous version of me would have been like, oh, it's okay, I totally got it. Let's keep going. I want to make it to the end, and I can do it. And it was hard for me to bow out. I was like, oh man, I'm not going to finish. I feel like I'm giving up. It's like not that bad. I could keep going. And it was a moment for me to really lean in and ask myself, what do I really want right now? And for those of you that have been following me for a while, I say that saying all the time. And I say that saying with myself all the time, and in the work that I do. It's a huge fundamental part of the work, is helping people to understand and to check in with themselves. What do you really want? Because so many of us spend our time doing things we don't really want to be doing, which naturally makes life so much harder and less enjoyable. So I was like, I really do want to finish, and I really wanted to get up to the high level and do some of the cool, segments up there. But really, I want to opt out. I want to go back down. I want to get some ice on my bum, and I want to just rest. And that's what I did. So it worked out, and it was such a great learning lesson. And I, of course, knew I was going to be giving this talk, and I never quite know exactly what I'm going to narrow it down to. I sort of let the week ruminate and percolate, and I take in things that I've been talking to people over the week about, and whether it's clients or potential clients or just people I meet in general and get to hear part of their story. And so it just sort of came together perfectly, because I was like, oh, this is how I would normally make life hard, is I would push myself past what feels good, what feels comfortable for me, right? And so, don't hear me, don't misunderstand, right? Of course, I'm all about pushing outside of your limits and going bigger and testing yourself and, standing up to the challenge. But when it's this scenario, right, where you're injured or something has come up and you need a time out, if you're the type of person who normally would push yourself to go farther anyway, when you don't really need to, right? I made this joke to the guy that was with us as I was having to make this decision, right? And even the decision felt hard. I was like, well, if we were out in the jungle for real and we needed to get to the other side, I could totally do it. Right? And so I'm you can tell the inner workings of my mind of I wouldn't be a quitter, I wouldn't give up, that whole thing. And so it was just really interesting even to watch myself go through it yesterday, to have this harder time opting to rest, opting to say, no, I'm not going to continue. I'm going to actually step out and go attend to myself. So it was a really great learning opportunity. It was perfectly paired with the training for this morning and the awareness that I'm going to share with you about how people literally make their life hard. And you may be thinking well, Sarah, I don't make my life hard. And here's the truth. In all the hundreds of people that I have worked with in the last 25 years, the truth of the matter is, yes, there are things that go on in the world that are complicated and messy. And one interpretation could be that they are hard. Even the description hard, right, is a very subjective word, because what's hard to me may not be hard to you. As you heard me tell that story this morning, you might be like, I wouldn't have a hard time at all opting out. I would have I wouldn't even finish the second level. I would have opted out and been come get me. I'm getting out of here as soon as the injury happened. So again, it's a very subjective conversation, really. But I'm using things that I, again, have heard over the 25 years that I've been helping people and just being in the world and having conversations. And from my own experience, there's a very core fundamental belief and set of beliefs in the world about how life is hard for a majority of the people. So that being said, yes, there are things that make life challenging and difficult, and we have all of this different stuff going on in the world that feels really hard and complicated and challenging to deal with, because we have a whole bunch of people out there in the world, right, with a whole bunch of different opinions and different ideas attempting to come together. But I'm not going to focus on those things today. You'll see how those things get impacted by what we're going to talk about this morning, which is really how you make it hard. Because that's the part that we have really great control over, how you contribute to your life being hard. And when we uncover how we are actually doing that, just like I gave in that example from yesterday, freedom comes as a result. And I'll say, I won't call it easy, but it's an easeful lifestyle when you realize how you make life hard. And when you uncover some of these deeper core fundamental reasons of how you contribute to life being hard, your eyes are whoa, that is really intense. That's serious. I actually am doing that. And so again, just like in that example from yesterday, that was all on me. Had I decided to continue, right, and go up to the third level, which Troy did do, I was super proud of him. He went the whole way. He was up there by himself and with a couple of the guides helping him, but he was up there on his own. And it was hard, he said. He was it challenged him more than levels 1 and 2. And it was a significant jump, which they did tell us before we got up there, that it was a significant jump from 2 to 3 at the intensity level. And so it would have required a lot more upper body strength and a lot more just the intensity of it would have felt a lot more. And so I was glad that I did not persist and insist on doing the level 3, because it really would have pushed me very far outside of what felt good for me. And so again, this ties right in a previous life when I was operating off of life is meant to be hard, life is hard as a fact, right? And one of the fundamentals that I grew up, that you probably also grew up with, is this idea of it is hard as a fact, and for you to have the things that you want in life, you have to be willing to go through the hard. And so for me, one of the ways that that looks like is pushing, right? Pushing past what feels comfortable, what feels safe, what feels easeful, restful, and extending, right? So overextending yourself, being in the place where you become overly responsible, where you're overworking, where you're taking on way more than you can deal with, right? And so you can see very quickly how that translates into your everyday life, at work, at home, where you're doing those exact same things, which could have very easily showed up for me on that ropes course yesterday, doing all those exact same things, only to wake up this morning and be in even more pain in addition to this injury that I have on my bum, right? And so then I am literally making the experience of life harder than it needs to be. Why? Not because of anything that anyone else was saying. Troy really didn't care. I mean, he wanted me to be with him, to be out there, but he would have much rather me rested if that's what I felt I needed. He definitely didn't want me to get stuck out there and then have to get rescued because I was overextending. The guides didn't care, right? So again, it's self-imposed ways that you make life hard. And so I'm going to break down 3 areas to really help you see how you are probably right now making life harder than it needs to be, and then give you some solution for each of those 3 areas so that you can get into the easeful, the restful way of living, because it's available. It's how I refer to liberated living. I did the hard way for up to around age 38. And now the second, half of my life, is the way I talk about it, is in the easeful and in the learning of how to do it even more easeful. And I grew up with a scripture reference that I loved. I grew up very much in the church, and one of the scriptures that I loved was being in the hand of God, learning how to live in the rest of God. And it was this sensation of like, man, if you could just, in the visual, regardless of what you believe spiritually or religiously, but just in the easeful hand of an all-powerful creator, right? Something that is safe and restful, and just to be like easefully, safely contained in that space, right? What a beautiful place to be. And I finally figured out how to do that here at about 40 years old. I made that shift in the awareness to be able to now say that life is now in the rest. A place that was completely unfamiliar to me prior to or between, around age 40. Before that, yes, there would be periods of rest, there would be vacations, or there would be time off, or yes, I enjoyed, a little bit on the weekends. And this is totally different. When you go from living the harder way and you have breaks and you take vacations, which sometimes feel restful, versus you're living your entire life from this point of view. It's a state of being, completely different experiences. You no longer feel in the day-to-day life is hard. Okay, so let's dive in here. The first one to look at is you were taught and conditioned to believe that life is hard. This is like the most basic fundamental thing that happens. So you grow up and all the different characters in your childhood have a role, they play a part in the way that you learn how to see the world. This is literally how it works, okay? So For those of you that don't know, my first career prior to coaching was being a psychotherapist and learning all about human behavior. So I have all of those years of experience of study, and I'm an avid learner and love reading and love studying. And it's one of my passions to read and to study. And so when you really understand how you come to be, the core fundamental is all of the people that you were around in early childhood. It's called imprinting. The things that they demonstrate to you and the way that your brain interprets the information that you're seeing gets imprinted on your brain inside of your mind, and you learn from watching them. So it's not to say you'll be exactly like them or that you interpret it even accurately, right? They'll be acting something out and you'll be watching it. And it's literally just like a play. You'll be watching it and you're going to make interpretations and conclusions and draw meanings from what you're watching. And so that gets imprinted on your brain, and you then live your life accordingly. And we all have different imprinting. We all have different ways that we have come to interpret how to live. And so you just simply do live according to what you were taught in early childhood. Does that make sense? Please let me know if you have any questions related to this, because if you haven't been steeped in the learning of it, it can be a little bit of a mind-blowing awareness to see. And so because you were taught and conditioned to believe that life was hard, and you were told things or you heard things in childhood like life is so hard, or work is so hard, or making money is so hard, or getting through the day is so hard, or, the list goes on. Relationships are hard, parenting is hard, kids are hard, right? Literally all of the things. And so whatever it was for you, think about it right now. Like, what did you hear in childhood around feeling hard, life being hard? Most of us learned very similar things because our interpretations of the world, when you're in communities with people, what do? We jump on the phone and we're like, oh my gosh, today was so hard. And then why was today hard? Oh, my boss was giving me a really hard time about blah, 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 right? And so then you're conferring with other people. And this is, of course, happening all over the world. You're conferring with other people and you're coming to agreements together about how things are hard to deal with, about how ultimately life is hard. And so here's what happens when you start in childhood understanding that this is the way to see things, and you go on and you go on and you go on through the years. Guess what? Here you are. Here I was at 38. Here you are at whatever age you are. And wherever you're at in this journey, thinking about that time of awareness, whether that's right now for you or you've already had it or it's yet to come, you carry from childhood those thoughts and beliefs and those ways of seeing the world. And so we're all in this together. We're in this collaboration. If you watch the news, very clearly you're watching on the news how hard life is. They're not showing you all the amazing things that happened on the news, right? They're not showing you like the amazing decision that I made yesterday to rest instead of press on to the end of the ropes course. No, that shit is not on the news. So you're literally watching the worst of the worst of the worst that's going on in the world on the news, right? It's available on the television. Pretty much anytime you want to hop on, there's something like that on television that you watch. And so again, we ultimately are all taking in something of the same sentiment that leaves all of us with some feeling of life being hard. And so then naturally, here you are as an adult believing life is hard and repeating life is hard, whether it's inside of your own head or again, you're like on the phone with a friend or family member and you're reviewing the day and you're like, oh, today was so hard. And it literally doesn't even matter what happened to you today. You could still say the same thing with the same level of energy, whether it was a day at work or it was a day out in the yard working, have that same sentiment, that same exact feeling. which as as we grow and learn together, I'll share more on the impact of carrying that same feeling into different places of your life, because it ultimately is just reinforcing you experiencing that same feeling no matter what you're doing. Whether you're at work feeling like ugh with your boss, or you're literally in your yard, when you're feeling that same feeling of life is hard, for instance, you're actually creating more negative feelings inside of you, even when you're at home working in your yard, which is nothing like being at the office. Whether you like being in the yard or not, it doesn't really matter. It's the same energy that you're carrying with you. And so when you carry that energy of life is hard and it feels like life is hard and you carry that, well, then you end up carrying it into every place you go in life. And so you won't necessarily feel that life is hard in every place, because there'll be moments where you'll be like, unconsciously, you'll decide, I'm not going to see this as hard. I'm going to decide that today is going to be restful, or that today is going to be fun. But if you were to really slow life down and look at your unconscious world, you would see that you were actually having to make a formal decision that said, I'm not going to experience what I normally experience today. I'm going to choose to have fun today. Which is why people, you look out and you see so much miserable, but people can't see it for themselves, because they want to say things like, well, every day isn't hard. I mean, I did enjoy Friday night when I went out with my friends, or I did enjoy when, such and such happened and I really had a good time on that Wednesday. So because it's not all the time, people get confused essentially, and they're like, oh, well, if it doesn't happen literally all the time, then I don't know, is life hard? Life feels hard. How do I deal with this? How do I see it? And you just are literally confused. And in all my 25 years of working with people, I would say confusion is the number one thing that keeps people from change, from doing things differently, is they're in confusion about what is actually going on in their life and how to deal with it. Again, for that reason I just explained. So I won't go into that too much. I think confusion is a great topic for me to talk about on another week, a whole separate training. Okay, so moving on to number 2. You were conditioned over time to believe very specific things about you and who you are that aren't true. Okay, and another way to just very clear and directly say this is you were taught to believe things that were actually not true, that were lies about you. And here's what I mean by that. So the first one is really a more global, relationships are hard, losing weight is hard, being a healthy person is hard, making money is hard, right? It's a general. But then number 2 here is getting really specific about the things that you were taught about yourself that really weren't true. So for instance, maybe you're in school and you come to believe, that you have to make straight A's. And so in your efforts to make straight A's, you start to feel like, wow, this is really hard. Does this feel easy for other people? I'm having to study a lot. I'm having to go for extra help in order to get these really great grades. And so you start to believe about yourself something, and I'll just fill in the blank for you, something like school is really hard, or I have to work really hard to get really good grades, or I have to get really good grades, or else I'll be disappointed in myself. I'll never get into a good college. My parents will be disappointed. My teachers will be disappointed. Whatever the story is that you come up with in your head, you come to learn very specific things about yourself that simply aren't true. Right? And so from there, you could conclude I'm really not that smart, because when I look around, there are other people who don't have to study as hard as I do. And so you could be literally making straight A's and have this conclusion, I'm not as smart as other people. Isn't that fascinating? I think that's really fascinating. And let me tell you, I've heard that more than once. That was a story I had told myself. But I've also heard that from numerous amounts of people in the 25 years I've been working with people from all ages. people who are literally high schoolers, college age, in school right now, to adults telling me their stories about how they're not smart and they're getting straight A's. So when you think about just that one example, right, and you're like, I'm not smart, and you're making straight A's, of course, life is going to feel way more hard than it has to. Because instead of celebrating that you're making great grades and you're learning lots of cool stuff and you're, expanding your knowledge and all the things, you're literally saying, this is so hard. And again, you're reinforcing inside of your body and inside of your experience the feeling of hard, of pain, of struggle, which is how you, again, continue to carry the same sentiment of struggle into all the areas of your life. Because even in the scenario where you're getting really good grades, for instance, I'm just using this as the example, you're literally learning struggle. Okay? And so if you, go over here to someone else's life who's not making good grades and they're making more like, D's and F's or C's, D's and F's or whatever, and whether they're like, you could go either way, they could be working really hard, right? And putting in lots of time and effort to get C's and D's, or they could be like just totally blowing off school and getting C's and D's. Both of those people are going to come up with different stories, but at the end of the conclusion, they could still come up with, this is so hard. Why bother studying? Like, school is so hard. I just end up getting C's and D's anyway, hence the struggle. Or why even, I'm studying so hard and I get C's and D's, or I blow off school and I get C's and D's. Like, why even bother studying? I just will get the C's and D's, and I already know life is going to be hard. So like, I'll just not even bother with all the struggle. And so here's just this big example of being able to look at, no matter where you're coming from, you can still come back to this conclusion, which most people have and do, that life is very hard. So even in talking to some of the teenagers in my world over the last several years here, there's an even more strong sentiment of school being very hard, of getting into college being very hard. And so we're seeing even younger now an even more intense reaction to how hard life is. Again, depending on who you're around, this is again, different people that I've talked to over the years, seeing that sentiment being even more impacting and more concerning to me, which is part of what has motivated me to do this work and to get on here live and talk about it as much as I can, because when I've heard it out of some of my close young people in my life, that life feels really hard to them and that they're like not excited about the future, and they're not even, they haven't actually moved out of the house yet, it causes me even greater concern, and it motivates me even more to be sharing the story and sharing the message that there is a lot of hope and there is a much easier way to live than what we have traditionally been taught. I won't go off on that rabbit hole because I could say a lot about that one, but I'll save that for another day. So the very specific things that you were taught about you, feel free to drop some in the comments, because again, this is very specific about you. I'll share some that either I was told or that I've heard the other people in my world specifically say about them. But things like, it's really hard to lose weight, right? I will never be certain weight. That was like a very common one from a lot of people in my own life and certainly in my work that I've heard. This notion around I'm not smart enough, right? Being smart is hard. I'm never gonna, maybe in childhood you're taught like you can't go into the field of art. That was a common one I actually just heard the other day, someone telling me how they loved art and they love graphic design and painting and all of like the expressive arts, but they learned in childhood from, again, the adults, right, who are trying to love and be concerned. They end up telling the young person, you're never gonna make any money at art. Like, that's not a real job, right? How many of you have heard that about your own profession? That's not a real job. You're never going to make money doing that. I definitely have heard that. And that is still a very prominent thing in social work and therapy, like you're never going to make good money. I'm in a therapist group online. Even though I'm now coaching, I still see myself as part of the mental health network. And it's a constant conversation about how they're not making money. And so again, you develop this very specific belief for you about your profession, about all the hard work that you've put into getting educated for your profession, about your future, about how you're never going to make more money, or that making money is really hard. All of these things that create inside of you a feeling of life is a struggle. Life is hard. So some other specifics lying around making, we talked about making money, about jobs, about your health being hard, right? How many times have you heard somebody say growing old is hard? Don't grow old, right? I just heard that one a few weeks ago. Somebody in passing said, don't grow old. And I found even myself yesterday at the ropes course when now every muscle in my body is sore this morning. Excuse me. And I had that sensation yesterday, like, oh, I feel old. And let me tell you, I stopped myself immediately and I was like, no, love, you don't feel old. You feel like you were just hanging from the trees for 2.5 hours. That's what you feel like. Don't associate the experience of this moment with an entire perspective on your life. But that is literally what we do. And you do it mostly unconsciously. People say crazy shit like that all the time, and they have no idea the impact that it is having on them. Every time you say something with that sentiment of struggle, you're negatively impacting, you're confirming within yourself that life is a struggle. And life becomes that much more consistently hard for you. Okay, so other things quickly here in this category are relationships, right? How many of you have heard that relationships are hard? I heard that. The main thing I heard like a lot growing up was relationships take a lot of work, right? Which is kind of the same thing as saying relationships are hard. And it wasn't even necessarily just marriage was hard, although that was for sure, that marriage took a lot of work, relationships took a lot of work, but also like parenting took a lot of work and was really hard. And so just a lot of sentiments, and think for yourself, like what did you learn growing up specifically about you and how you came to see the world? Whether it's the specific ways that you decided, like, oh yeah, parenting does look really hard. And then maybe you decided, I'm never going to have kids. That's something that I see regularly with people. Surprising numbers of people who are like, yeah, I'm never going to have kids. Or, yeah, I never want to get married. Or, if I get married, I probably won't stay married. Or, if I get married or if I'm in a serious relationship, I'm probably going to need a therapist or help getting through the relationship. So we create all of these different thoughts in our own minds way before we're even experiencing them about who we are, essentially, is what it boils down to. You've already defined that you're a person who's going to fail at relationships, fail at parenting, or really struggle significantly in parenting, really struggle significantly in your relationships, in your marriages, in all kinds of areas regarding relationships. So think about for yourself right now, please. So this is the most impacting. Like, what did I come to believe about myself a lot of the time before you even got into the situation? Again, most of this happens unconsciously, because most people aren't regularly examining their life and or in a relationship with someone like a coach or a therapist who's able to like help you tease out, what are you believing about that? What are you making that mean about you right now, right? That is the stuff I love doing. So you may be an exception and you maybe do that, but most people don't do that. And if you are doing it, you start doing it when you're adults. And so the groundwork has already been laid. And so again, most of this happens very unconsciously, and it really requires teasing it out with another human to be able to actually even see what you are referring to yourself as, how you're referring to your life, before you can really become conscious of it. Okay, so those are the three, big areas: relationships, money, health. There are a lot of other lies you have probably come to believe about yourself. Things like life will never work out for you the way you want it to. You can't have what you want. Life will never be easy for you. You're one of the people that will always struggle. Again, feel free to drop it into the comments. What are those very specific things that you came to believe about yourself that you can tell already are impacting you, right? I'm never going to be one of those people that makes money easily. Money will always come hard to me. I'm thinking even just this last week, I met two people who are working like 3 jobs, creative jobs, but still working 60 hours with the idea, the mindset that they're one of the people that has to work a ton of hours in order to be able to make money. So there are all of these very specific things that you have come to believe about yourself, again, from early childhood. This got laid. The foundation for all of those beliefs, so all of that pattern of believing for who you would be, and you've now been believing it probably for somewhere around 20 years, depending on how old you are, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Oh, let me tell you this really quick story because it's so appropriate. Fits in. I just remembered it. My dad has had a long-standing fear, and he would be okay with me telling you this story. Let me preface. He's had a long-standing fear of dogs. Forever since I've known him, a long-standing fear of dogs. And so much so that he wouldn't go near a dog. If there was a dog out in the neighborhood and he was walking that way, he'd probably turn around. I mean, extensive, deep-seated fear. Because he believed that dogs were scary and that dogs were dangerous. That's probably more accurate to say that dogs were dangerous. And he held this belief about himself and the way that he saw the world and about dogs, right? And his own personal belief was that he would probably get attacked by a dog. And so here he is in his 60s and ends up in this beautiful exchange with my husband, able to really look at this belief at the level that you need to look at the beliefs in order to get free from them. And my dad is no longer afraid of dogs because of this conversation, this healing exchange that he had with my husband. And so he was able to reflect and to see wow, I've been believing that I would get attacked by a dog for probably 50 years. He'd been believing that thought. Dogs are dangerous. If I come into contact with a dog, it's very likely I will get attacked. Has been causing all kinds of unique challenges, we'll say, in his life where he didn't feel the freedom to be out and about wherever he wanted to be because of that one belief, right? And I'm zeroing in on one belief when we all are running around with bazillions of beliefs that are impacting our life. And he got freed from that. And so now healed, freed, however you want to think about it, liberated from that belief. And so now he's not walking around with that same belief, and it's no longer making his life hard. Okay, so let's move on to the last category, and then let's chat out some solutions. So the last one, and probably literally the most important, is you are out of alignment with who you are truly meant to be. This is by far, and it's a culmination of the first two, but it's by far the thing that's the most significant that is making your life hard. Harder than it needs to be. And here's the thing, right? Where we are you want to look at the ways in which you're contributing to making your life harder than it needs to be. This one is a combination of the first two. You're trying to, essentially as a result of the first two, you're basically showing up in the world as a different person than who you're really originally, truthfully intended and or truthfully are. Because when we remove the lies, both from what we were taught about the world and from what we were taught about ourselves, we clear out all of that stuff. The true you is left, and the true you isn't filled with all of this heaviness, the hard, the struggle. And so that's why I say you're working really hard actually to be someone that you're not. Another way of thinking about that is that you basically grow up being an imposter in your own skin. That's one of the number one things that I hear from clients that I work with is they want to feel comfortable in their own skin. And they don't feel comfortable when they come and they start to work with me. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin. And it feels awful, right? And so another way that I talk about that and think about that is to say you feel like an imposter in your own life. Yeah, I got to be about 38, up until 38, where I too felt like an imposter in my own life. And here's the reason. It's because you're out of alignment. You're just quite simply out of alignment with who you are truly meant to be and with who you desire to be. You have very specific dreams, desires, passions, interests, things that you want, that you know, right? Things that are inside of you. Some of you consciously are aware, and others of you, it lies dormant. And you're like, I don't know, but you do. It is inside of you. All of these answers about what you most want for your life and who you feel you're meant to be and the specific callings on your life are absolutely inside of you. I met with somebody, I meet with people regularly, and just in the last couple of weeks, I heard from people, probably 3 different people, like, I don't know. I don't know what I really want. I don't know what I'm really meant to be. I don't know my contribution in the world. And I'm like, no, you do. For sure, 100% you do. Do you want me to help you? And we probably spent like 10 or 15 minutes teasing it out. And by the end of that time, they were like, wow, I do know. It is in me. So when we're out of alignment with those things within us that we know, we feel inside of us we're meant for something. And here's the thing, even if you don't know, you don't have a tangible, you can't tell me specifically, you have a sensation that you aren't meant to be doing what you're doing right now. And this is another thing I heard from somebody this week is this very specific reflection, the thing that I'm doing right now isn't the thing that I feel I'm meant to be doing. I don't know what that other thing is, but I know that this right now, this life, this place where I'm in, this work that I'm doing, this person that I'm with, this isn't it. And that's like the culmination here is when you're out of alignment with who you feel you're meant to be and what you're meant to be doing in your life, life is so much harder. So much harder. Every aspect of life gets harder. And the reflections that I got from this last week, what we were able to recognize is they felt really tired, right? One person was like, I need a vacation. Another person was like, I get to the end of the day and I just kind of zone out. There are like fun things that I'd like to do at the end of the day, but like I just feel so tired. I don't have any energy to do them. This is very common. I've heard this from all the people that I work with and many of the people that I just have conversations with, and it was for darn sure true in my own personal life. I was exhausted. And this is why. This is like really the reason, if this is like where you are at in your own life and you're feeling like, hard life is a struggle, all these things, and maybe you're even just feeling overwhelmed in your current life, right? You're feeling just overwhelmed with all your tasks and your responsibilities, and you're like, feels hard, okay? Probably it's because there are areas of your life that are out of alignment, most likely. There are areas of your life that are out of alignment. You are hiding. You don't feel like you're the real you. You feel like you're living as an imposter. Maybe you don't even feel like you know who the real you is. I too felt that way. All of those things are exhausting and absolutely contribute to life is hard. So the solution, let's focus the rest of our time on the solution. So if we just use these 3 fundamentals, you have to change the way you view the world. You have to be willing to no longer repeat life is hard. You, in fact, have to be willing to replace life is hard with something way more helpful, way more useful, right? Life is exciting. Life is interesting. Life is an adventure. Life is a journey. All of those work. And so inside of all of the different ways that you view the world and the different words that you use to say that life is hard or life is a struggle, and when you like call up on the phone and you're talking to your friends and your peeps and you're like, you have to be willing to redefine that conversation. Okay, you have to literally change the way you talk about things, the way you engage others in conversation about things, and you have to be willing to no longer say those things so that you can eventually stop thinking those things and then replace it with something that actually allows you to feel good. Because that's really the goal. We all want to feel good. We're all on this search to figure out how to feel good, how to feel real, how to feel genuine, how to feel authentic. Okay, so then, right, the number 2 is you have to change the way you've conditioned and come to believe about who you are. Okay, so all those things that you were told that really never sat well with you, that you never really believed, that you were like, I don't agree, right? Maybe you were told you're not a writer, you're not a singer, you're not, one of those people that's going to be in good shape, you're not meant to be athletic, you're not meant to have a lot of money, you're not meant to be in a great relationship. Whatever those things were that you were specifically told about who you were. You're not smart, you're not, whatever, fill in the blank for yourself. You have to be willing and intentionally go in and recondition your mind, redefine the way you see yourself. Okay, so the same thing is pulling out, stopping those labels, those ways in which you refer to yourself, those beliefs in which you have about yourself and your own life, stopping those and putting in what is true and or what you desire to be true about yourself. You are incredibly smart, you're incredibly intelligent, you're incredibly capable, you're very successful, you're making money, you're able to make money. All the things that you are truly wanting that are who you feel you're meant to be. And then lastly, the combination of those two helps to bring you into alignment, right? And that really is the main goal, is to bring you into alignment with who you are meant to be, with those passions, those desires, those interests, those things that feel like the true you. And the reason I don't start with this one is because it's hard to see who the true you is when forever you've been told that it isn't you, right? So if you've been told, you're not good at singing, well, then you're probably not singing. You're probably hiding and only singing in the shower, maybe just singing in your car, but you're not probably practicing and taking lessons and working on expanding your vocal range and, cultivating a platform for you to be able to sing on. That's not happening if you were originally taught you can't make money singing, right? You can't make money with that type of job. That isn't a real job. And you actually don't have a very good voice. And you really shouldn't quit your day job, right? And so of course, you're not going to see how those things are actually contributing to your life being hard and you being out of alignment. And so you start by looking at some of these very specific things with how you see the world, with how you see yourself. And that's when you understand, I got to bring myself into alignment. Let me just tell you, this feels uncomfortable, right? Because if your whole life you were told you're always going to be a little chunky, you're always going to struggle with weight, well, then you're going to be a person who has a struggle with weight, who has a struggle with eating habits, who has a struggle with exercising, who has a struggle with taking care of yourself. Those are going to be normal. You're going to think those things are normal because you were told you were always going to struggle with your weight. You were always going to be a little chunky. And so when you come into alignment and you recognize, no, I am meant for great health. I am meant to feel comfortable in my own skin. My body is designed to be a certain way. Then everything changes. Everything you've ever been taught changes, right? You're like, oh, I don't actually have to be a person that struggles with my weight. I don't have to be chunky. I don't have to always struggle with food and exercise and nutrition. No, I'm meant to be in amazing health. And so when you bring yourself into alignment with who your core has always believed that you are and how you have always believed that life should be, and you shift the way that you're living, right? You shift the way that you see yourself, you shift the way that you see the world, and you reorder and reprioritize your life, is how you bring yourself into alignment. So yes, this feels uncomfortable. Yes, it can be like, whoa, this feels like jarring. And it does feel that way oftentimes for people when they're just like, wow, you mean I could actually live a life that I really enjoyed? It's a mind-blowing awareness, like, whoa. And you mean I could actually do that thing I've always wanted to do for a living and make money doing it? What? I've worked with several people who've had that awareness. It is very jarring at first, right? Which is why people hire me to work with them, because it does feel like your whole world is sort of getting tossed around fundamentally, foundationally. But when you get over to the other side, and again, I work with people for a period of 6 months, so it's actually a very short window of time compared to the 20 plus years you've been living the other way, right? The hard way and the way you thought you had to and the struggle. And then you work with me for about 6 months. You know, a lot of people work with me for longer because they realize, oh, wow, this is amazing. I want more of this. But within that 6 months, if you go all in on the work and you're like fully committed and showing up just like you are here this morning, you absolutely get to a point at the end of the 6 months where you're like, wow, life can be like this. This is amazing. Yes, please help me learn how to do this even better, even more, because I really want to understand how to do this. This feels so good. And I can do the things that I've always wanted to do, right? It's not like I come along and like show people some amazing thing that they can now do. It's that they've always had it within them. And I come along and I shine a big light on it and show them like, oh, you actually want to be doing this other thing that like you're telling me you really don't want to do or you really can't do, but actually you really do want to do that thing. And then we just talk for like 10 or 15 minutes to get really clear about what you actually want your life to look like. And then we go to work for 6 months on actually creating that happening, right? And we do a lot of this exact process that I've shown you here is we're going in and we're assessing and we're taking inventory and we're noting all the ways in which you've come to believe as a fact that life is hard and that you can't do what you want to do. And we rework that to something like life is an adventure. And you can absolutely do the thing that you have been wanting to do forever. And here's how. And then we literally get you on that path and you quickly figure out how to do it. So my work and my reason for people hiring me is because I carve out the space, right? I remove all of that crap that has been hindering you from being able to do the things you've always wanted to do. And I clear the path. I help you clear the path, which is why I call it, I help you get liberated from all of this crap that's gotten put on you. And I help you get into alignment with the you you've always wanted to be, the you that's always been in there, the you that has been screaming and desperately wanting to come out. So this is how life can actually be very much, we'll say, easier. And it really can be. Again, it's not to say that like life doesn't happen, right? I have this huge injury on my right butt cheek because life happens, right? And so I'm going to be nursing that this week and taking care of it and icing it and all the things because life happens, right? So we have this like magical thinking that like we're not going to have any struggles. No. That doesn't happen. That's not real life. That's like a fairy tale that we were told in childhood that there are like people out there who have no struggles. That's complete bullshit. Everyone deals with life happening. Life is a series of events that unfold that you attend to. That actually is, in the most neutral way to look at life, that's actually all that life is. It's this series of events that happens that brings up all kinds of opportunities for us to learn and work our way through and feel and experience and all of the things. So, thank you so much for joining me, as always, for your Sunday morning Liberated training. And I want to encourage you this week, really seriously looking at your life and asking, am I doing what I really want to be doing? Does my life look like what I really want? And in your day-to-day, am I doing what I really want? Do I feel in alignment? And if you're not, it just means you need a little bit of help getting yourself into alignment. So I am available to help you do that. It is my jam. It is the thing that I am gifted to do to help you get into alignment in less than 6 months. So I will drop a link here in the comments. The first step is setting up a call with me where you and I get to hop on a video just like this, but where I can clearly see you and learn about what it is you really want and what it is that's been holding you back, because everyone has a different journey for what you really want and what's been specifically holding you back. And then I'll tell you about the details of how I can help you and the ways in which I will help you get into alignment and what it would look like to work with me. All right, you guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me. Drop it into the comments how this has helped you, what insights you've had, what awarenesses, what questions you have. And I'm wishing you a beautiful Sunday. And I'll see you next week, same time, 9:30. Soon, I'm going to be on Zoom. We'll still be streaming live, but I'll be inviting you to join me on Zoom for those of you that want to show up in person. And I will eventually be doing a little bit of coaching on those calls. So stay tuned for all the details on that happening. But right now, it's Sunday mornings at 9:30 here Eastern Time. All right, between now and next weekend, go do that thing you most want to be doing. And I'll talk to you soon.